I slammed the brakes, tires screeching against the icy asphalt, my beat-up Civic fishtailing as a semi roared past, its horn blaring like a banshee in the Seattle dusk. My heart jackhammered in my chest, breath fogging the windshield as I gripped the steering wheel, white-knuckled, the crumpled gift bag in the passenger seat tumbling to the floor. December 2020, and I'd almost become a statistic on I-5, just another holiday wreck. The near miss left my hands trembling, but I forced myself to exhale, to focus. I was almost home. Homey parents' sleek, glass-walled mansion in Laurelhurst. The kind of place that screamed money but felt like a museum. I grabbed my battered suitcase and the gift bag, its tissue paper now a mangled mess, and stumbled up the stone steps, the wind biting through my thrift store coat. The door loomed ahead, heavy oak with a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head, the kind of detail my mother, Claire, loved to brag about at her charity galas. I knocked once, twice, my breath catching in the cold. No answer. The windows glowed faintly, but the house was silent, too silent for the night before Christmas Eve. No pine-scented candles, no Bing Crosby crooning from the Bluetooth speaker, no clatter of Mom's holiday baking, just a stillness that felt like the air before a storm breaks. I knocked again, harder, the sound swallowed by the empty street behind me. Finally, the door swung open, and there was Mom, her auburn hair pulled into a flawless chignon, her cashmere sweater pristine despite the late hour. Her eyes flicked over me distracted, like I was a delivery she hadn't ordered. "Emily, you're early," she said, stepping aside without a hug, her voice clipped, the way it got when she was juggling too many guest lists. I hesitated in the doorway, not quite inside, my suitcase heavy in my hand. Something was wrong. The foyer was cluttered with luggage-a-knot, the mismatched duffels of my childhood road trips, but sleek, monogrammed Louis Vuitton suitcases, 4 of them, lined up like soldiers ready to march. From the dining room, my sister Sophia's voice floated out, sharp and bright, cutting through the quiet like a spotlight. "Can you believe the Maldives resort has private yachts? Liam looked it up. They even assign you a personal chef." Her laugh was all confidence, the kind that filled rooms and left no space for anyone else. I froze, my chest tightening around something I couldn't name yet, a mix of dread and déjà vu. Sophia, 5 years older, 5 inches taller, and in my parents' eyes 5 times more destined for greatness, was holding court as always. I was the junior lawyer, the one who'd clawed her way through Stanford Law on a partial scholarship, working 80-hour weeks at a downtown firm and moonlighting as a paralegal to make ends meet. I'd skipped meals, sleep, and any semblance of a social life to save 50 for this family triper trip I'd been promised would be our first real holiday together in years. But standing there, the cold seeping through my boots, I felt like an intruder in my own story. I stepped inside, the marble floor echoing under my soles, and followed the voices to the dining room. The table was set with Mom's good china, the kind she only pulled out for Sophia's big announcements. My father, James, sat at the head, his silver hair catching the chandelier light, his tie loosened like he'd just come from a boardroom. Sophia lounged across from him, her manicured nails tapping her wineglass, while her fiancé, Liam, hovered at her side, all sharp jawline and sharper ambition. They barely looked up as I entered, my suitcase dragging behind me like an afterthought. "Emily, sit," Mom said, gesturing to a chair like I was a guest at someone else's dinner party. I set the gift bag on the floor, its Contensa hand-knitted scarf for Mom, a book for Dad, a vintage watch for Sophia feeling pathetic now, too small for this room. The air was thick, not with holiday warmth, but with something heavier, like a secret everyone else already knew. Sophia swirled her wine, her smile practiced, the one she'd used since we were kids to charm teachers and disarm rivals. "We need to talk," she said, her voice smooth but edged, like a blade wrapped in silk. I sat, my hands folding in my lap, the same way they did when I was 15 and stopped joining family dinners because no one noticed when I left. Dad cleared his throat, his telltale sign that things were about to get awkward. "Pumpkin," he said, the nickname sounding hollow. "There's been a change of plans." My stomach dropped, the room tilting slightly, like the moment before a verdict is read in court. Sophia leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine, not with warmth but with calculation. "The startup's hit some snags," she said. "Margins are tight, projections off. So, after talking it over, Mom, Dad, Liam and Mew decided it's best if you sit this one out." The words landed like a slap, sharp and cold. I stared at her, then at Mom, then Dad, waiting for someone to flinch, to say it was a mistake. No one did. "But I paid," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The 50 I'd wired to Sophia in November flashing in my Mindevery penny scraped from overtime, skipped coffee runs, and sold textbooks. Sophia's smile didn't waver. "And that really helped with the deposits, Em. Thank you." Her tone was so casual, like she'd borrowed a sweater, not stolen my life savings. "It's still for the trip," she added. "Just not for you." Mom reached for my arm, her touchlight, like she was afraid I'd break. "Family means being flexible, Emily," she said, as if I was the one being unreasonable. Liam stared at his plate, suddenly fascinated by the rosemary garnish. Dad nodded, his face a mask of practiced regret. "You'll have the house to yourself. Some quiet. You can catch up on work." Work. The word stung, a reminder of the 80-hour weeks I'd endured, the nights I'd fallen asleep at my desk, the dreams I'd shelved to be part of this family. They looked at me like this was kindness, like leaving me behind was a gift. I wanted to scream, to upend the table, to demand my money back. But I didn't. Not yet. Because this wasn't new. This was just the latest chapter in a story that started long before I was old enough to understand it. Sophia was the golden child, the one who'd won a national debate championship at 16, prompting Mom to throw a gala with a string quartet and custom T-shirts that read, "Future CEO." When I got into Stanford Law, she'd nodded once, said, "That's nice, dear," and moved on to gush about Sophia's latest pitch deck. Dad would light up when Sophia called from her Ivy League campus, her voice filling the kitchen over speakerphone, talking about venture capital and networking events. "She's got that Harper drive," he'd say, as if I'd inherited nothing but my name. By the time I was 15, I'd stopped sitting at the dinner table. I'd slip up to my room, my homework spread across my bed, while Sophia's voice droned on about her case competitions. No one noticed when I stopped showing up. No one except Grandpa Henry. He lived an hour away, in a cedar-scented cabin on the Olympic Peninsula, the kind of place you'd see in a postcard, all weathered shingles and wildflowers. It smelled of old vinyl records and pipe smoke, a history you could breathe. When the house got too loud, not with shouting, but with the kind of silence that swallows you whole, I'd drive out to Henry's, my learner's permit barely legal, and he'd be waiting on the porch, no questions asked. He'd scoot over on the sagging couch, hand me a glass of whiskey barely a splash, but enough to feel grown and put on Springsteen or Dylan, the needle crackling against the record. The quiet ones write their own stories. Out of the chaos, he'd say, handing me a leather-bound journal when I turned 16. He never compared me to Sophia, never made me feel like I was competing for air. He taught me to shoot a rifle, to navigate the woods by the stars, to trust my own compass. One night, when I was 17, I showed up at his cabin shaking, Mom having forgotten to pick me up from mock trial because Sophia needed help with a grant proposal. Henry didn't say a word. He just slid a root beer across the table and opened a dog-eared copy of The Outsiders, reading aloud until I stopped trembling. That cabin was my sanctuary, the one place I existed fully, not as Sophia's sister or Claire's afterthought, but as Emily. When Henry died my first year at Stanford, it was like someone had ripped out a piece of my spine. Mum left a voicemail, her voice shaky but not broken. "He's gone, Emily. I thought you should know." The funeral was a blur Sophia in a tailored black dress, whispering to Liam about her startup's next funding round, while I stood by the casket, trying to memorize the lines in Henry's hands. The will reading came a week later, in a sterile attorney's office that smelled of wood polish and regret. Mom got 75-0, her eyes misting over as she squeezed Dad's hand. Sophia got 500-0, her face lighting up like she'd won the lottery. "Baby," she whispered to Liam, "we can open the second office." Then the lawyer turned to me. "To my granddaughter, Emily Harper, I leave my cabin in the Olympic Peninsula, including all contents and the surrounding 10 acres. A beat of silence, then Sophia's laugh, sharp and amused, like I'd been handed a consolation prize. "Oh my God, you got the shack," she said, practically giddy. "Sell it, Em. Maybe you'll get enough for a decent car before it collapses." Liam chuckled, low and mean, adding, "If it doesn't collapse first." Mom shushed them, but her eyes stayed on Sophia, already moving on to wedding venues and wine pairings. I sat there, staring at the table, trying to hear Henry's voice in the walls, trying to believe what he'd left me wasn't just scrap. The cabin wasn't worth much, not in dollars. Zillow pegged it at 200-0, maybe less with the leaky roof and outdated plumbing. But it held Henry's vinyl collection, his carved oak table, the rocking chair that knew my weight by heart. It was where I'd learned to breathe, to be. I clung to that thought as I drove back to Stanford, the road blurring through tears I refused to let fall. I threw myself into work. 6 a.m. at the law firm, midnight at the paralegal gig, my life a cycle of caffeine and deadlines. I skipped takeout, birthdays, even my own graduation party, because I'd let myself believe in the Maldives trip. Sophia had texted in November, all business. "We're finalizing bookings. Need your 50 today to lock it in." I wired it that afternoon, every penny I had, picturing sun-soaked beaches and my family finally seeing me. I even bought a clearance, swimsuit, navy, simple, the kind that wouldn't draw attention but felt like a promise. But that night, December 2020, as I sat at the dining room table, the truth hit harder than the near crash on I-5. They'd used my money, my sacrifice, to bankroll their first-class tickets, their private yachts, and left me behind like I was nothing. After dinner, Sophia pulled me aside, her voice low, her perfume sharp. "Don't make a scene, Em," she said, her eyes glinting. "I've got screenshots of your case files, mistakes you made at the firm, one email to your boss, and you're done. Keep quiet, and we're good." My blood ran cold. Blackmail. My own sister, holding my career over my head like a guillotine. I nodded, not because I was afraid, but because I needed time to think, to plan. I barely slept that night, the mansion's pipes groaning like they were mocking me. By morning, I was back at the cabin, needing Henry's ghost to steady me, but when I walked in, the air was wrong. Sophia's designer coats hung in the closet. Liam's tech gadgets cluttered the counter, their engagement photo propped where Henry's record player used to be. They'd moved in, uninvited, turning my sanctuary into their Airbnb. I stood there, my pulse pounding, and something snapped. I started packing their things, Gucci bags, espresso machines, monogram towels, each item a violation. I didn't break anything, didn't scream. I just moved, deliberate, like a lawyer building a case. I called a moving company, paying quadruple for a Christmas Eve job. The guy on the phone didn't ask questions, just said, "Rough holiday, huh?" By sunset, their stuff was gone, loaded into a truck bound for a storage unit across town. Then I called a locksmith, an old guy with salt and pepper hair who raised an eyebrow but got to work. "Family feud?" he asked. sliding new keys into my hand. I smiled tight. Something like that. That night, I smelled gasoline, sharp and acrid, and saw a shadow dart across the porch. My heart stopped as I grabbed a bucket, dousing a smouldering rag before flames could catch. Someone had tried to burn the cabin down. I didn't call the cops. Not yet. But I knew this wasn't over. By morning, my phone was a Warzone 100 texts, 50 missed calls. Mom, Emily, what's going on? Everything's gone. Sophia, you had no right. You'll pay for this. Liam, the locks won't turn. You can't evict family. I let them buzz, each message a needle under my skin. Then Mom called again, her voice cracking. What's wrong with you? Dad's voice cut in from the background. You changed the locks without a word. I sat in Henry's rocking chair, the new keys cold in my palm, and picked up. Let me talk, I said, my voice steady for the first time in years. They went quiet, maybe from shock. You took my money, my home, my voice, I said. You used my 5-0 for your cocktails and yachts. You let Sophia and Liam squat in my cabin without asking. You've made every decision like I'm not in the room. I'm done bending. Mom tried to interrupt, but I cut her off. No, let me finish. You always said family means sacrifice, but I'm the only one who's ever lost anything. The cabin is mine, Henry's gift. And for the first time, I'm keeping what's mine. The silence that followed was heavier than the snow outside. Dad's voice came, flat and cold. I hope you're proud of yourself. I looked at the photo on the mantlim and Henry on a boat, fishing lines tangled, his arm around me. I think someone would be, I said, and hung up. I turned off my phone, let the cabin's quiet wrap around me like a quilt. But in the attic, I found something, a sealed letter from Henry, addressed to me, the paper yellowed but unopened. My hands shook as I held it, the weight of his words waiting, and in his desk, a key, heavy and strange, not fitting any lock in the house. A journal in the drawer mentioned a debt the family owed, no details, just a warning to guard what's yours. Downstairs, in the basement, a map with cryptic markings near a lake, and on my phone, an old voicemail from Henry, his voice low. Protect it, Emily. It's more than you think. What had he left me? Not just a cabin, but something bigger, something they all wanted. I didn't know yet, but I'd find out. And no one, not Sophia, not Mom, not Dad would take it from me again. The cabin's quiet was different now, heavier, like it knew what I'd done. I sat in Grandpa Henry's rocking chair, the new keys biting into my palm, the quilt draped over my shoulders smelling faintly of cedar and memory. Outside, the Olympic Peninsula snow fell in slow, deliberate flakes, blanketing the world in a hush that felt like permission to breathe. But my phone, face down on the oak table, vibrated again, a relentless buzz that reminded me the world beyond these walls wasn't done with me. 112 messages, 63 missed calls, Mom's pleas, Dad's accusations, Sophia's venom, Liam's cold demands. I didn't read them. Not yet. The letter from Henry, yellowed and sealed, sat on the table beside a strange, heavy key and a journal I hadn't dared open. They were anchors, tethering me to something bigger, something I didn't understand but could feel in my bones. This wasn't just about the cabin, it was about what Henry had left me to protect. I stood, the floorboards creaking under my boots, and moved to the mantel. The photo of Henry and me on the lake stared back, his arm around my shoulder, our fishing lines tangled, both of us laughing like the world couldn't touch us. I traced the frame, my fingers lingering on his handwriting scrawled on the back. To Emily, the quiet ones always come back stronger. My throat tightened, not with tears but with resolve. I'd taken the first step packing Sophia and Liam's things, changing the locks, but the fight was far from over. They'd come for me, for this place, and whatever Henry had hidden here. I could feel it. the way you feel a storm before the first clap of thunder. The gasoline scare from last night still lingered in my nose, sharp and acrid, a warning that someone, maybe Sophia, maybe Liam, maybe someone else wanted this cabin gone. I doused the rag before the flames could spread, but my hands shook as I'd stood on the porch, scanning the dark for the figure I'd seen sprinting into the trees. No footprints in the snow, no tire tracks, just the fading crunch of branches. I hadn't called the police, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't trust them to understand what was at stake. Not yet. I needed answers first, and they were here, in this cabin, in Henry's cryptic gifts. I started with the letter. The envelope was thick, the kind you'd use for something meant to last. My name was written in Henry's careful script, the ink faded but deliberate. I slid a knife under the seal, my heart pounding like it had on I-5 when that semi nearly flattened me. Inside was a single sheet, folded once, the paper creased from years of waiting. "Emily," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've got the cabin. It's more than wood and nails. It's a promise. There's a debt this family owes, one they'll never admit. Guard it. Trust your gut. The key will show you when you're ready." Below his signature was a string of numbers 47.6097, 122.6764 coordinates, maybe. But to where? I set the letter down, my pulse racing. A debt. A promise. A key. What had Henry known that he couldn't say outright? The journal was next, its leather cover worn soft from years of handling. I opened it, half expecting poetry or fishing logs, but the pages were dense with Henry's tight scroll dates, names, transactions. One entry, dated 10 years ago, caught my eye. Claire borrowed 200, 0. Said it was for Sophia's college, never repaid. Watch them, E. They'll take what's yours if you let them. My breath caught. Mom had borrowed from Henry, and he'd known she wouldn't pay it back. Had he seen this coming? Sophia's greed, Mom's blindness, Dad's complicity? Another entry, closer to his death. Found it, buried where the lake bends. They'll come for it. Protect her, E. Protect who? Me? Or something else? The key was heavier than it looked, its teeth jagged and old, not like any lock in the cabin. I turned it over, searching for a clue, but it was blank, cold, unyielding. The map I'd found in the basement was my last leader, faded topographic sheet of the peninsula, with a red X near a lake, circled in Henry's hand. The coordinates from the letter matched the X almost exactly. Whatever Henry wanted me to find, it was out there, in the woods, by the water. But it was Christmas Eve, the snow was piling up, and I was alone, with a family that felt more like a threat than a comfort. My phone buzzed again, Sophia's name flashing. I ignored it, but the next vibration was a text, not from her, but an unknown number. You can't hide what's ours. Check the shed. My blood went cold. The shed was behind the cabin, a rickety thing Henry used for tools and fishing gear. I grabbed the rifle he'd taught me to shoot, my hands steady despite the adrenaline spiking through me. The snow crunched under my boots as I stepped outside, the air sharp enough to cut. The shed door was ajar, swaying in the wind, and my flashlight beam caught something inside a black duffel bag, unzipped, spilling papers and a glint of metal. I knelt, my breath fogging, and pulled out a stack of documents. Land deeds, old ones, with Henry's name, and another I didn't recognize. Everett Holdings. There was a letter, too, not from Henry but typed, unsigned. The cabin sits on more than you know. Sell, or we'll make you. My heart stopped. The cabin wasn't just a home, it was a target. The metal glint was a knife, its blade etched with a symbol I didn't recognize, a circle with a slash through it. I stuffed the papers back, slung the bag over my shoulder, and ran back to the cabin, locking the door behind me. My phone buzzed again, another text from the unknown number. You were warned. I turned it off, my hands shaking now, and shoved the bag under the couch. I needed to think, to plan, but the world was closing in. Christmas morning dawned grey and cold, the snow heavier now, blanketing the peninsula in a silence that felt like a trap. I stood on the porch, rifle in hand, watching the road for the chauffeured SUVs that would carry Mom, Dad, Sophia, and Liam to the airport. They'd be sipping mimosas in the Maldives by tomorrow, while I was here, guarding a secret I didn't fully understand. My phone was off, but I could imagine the messages piling up, Sophia's threats growing sharper, Mom's pleas more desperate. I waved as their cars pulled away, Mom calling out, "Water the plants, check the mail." Dad added, "And turn off the porch light." Sophia leaned out, her sunglasses glinting. "We'll send photos, Em. Don't feel left out." Her laugh was a knife, and I smiled back, my face a mask, knowing they'd find their things gone when they returned. Inside the cabin, I started moving faster. Sophia's designer bags, Liam's tech gadgets, their smug engagement photo, they didn't belong here. I packed them with care, not out of kindness, but because I wanted no trace of them left. The moving company arrived at noon. A burly guy named Mike, who didn't blink at the holiday rates. "Family drama?" he asked, hauling boxes. I nodded, handing him a wad of cash I'd scraped from my savings. By dusk, the cabin was mine again, the air lighter, like it could breathe. The locksmith came next, a grizzled man named Ray who worked fast, his eyes kind but curious. "Rough Christmas?" he asked, handing me the new keys. "Long overdue," I said, and he didn't press. But that night, the gasoline smell returned. I woke to it, sharp and choking, my heart lurching as I grabbed the rifle and ran to the porch. A trail of liquid glistened in the snow, leading to a pile of rags by the steps. I doused them with water, my hands shaking, but not before I saw the figure again, taller this time, hooded, sprinting toward the trees. I fired a warning shot, the crack echoing through the night, and they vanished. My phone lit up when I turned it back on Sophia. "You stole our lives." "You'll pay, Mom. This isn't you, Emily. Fix this, Liam. The locks won't turn. You can't do this, Dad. We're a family." Act like it. I deleted them all. But another text came from the unknown number. Next time, the fire spreads. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, rifle across my lap, watching the snow bury the world. By morning, I was done waiting. I pulled the map from the basement, the red X glaring like a challenge. The lake was a mile out, through dense woods and knee-deep snow. I packed a bag flashlight, knife, Henry's journal, the strange key, and headed out. The coordinates burned into my mind. The forest was silent, the kind of quiet that makes your own heartbeat sound like a drum. I followed the map, my boots sinking, my breath fogging, until I reached the lake, its surface frozen, the bend marked by a gnarled pine. The X was here, somewhere, but the ground was solid, the snow undisturbed. I started digging, my hands numb, the shovel biting into frozen earth. An hour passed, then 2, and I found nothing but rocks and roots. My phone buzzed in my pocket, another unknown text. "You're close. Stop now or you won't walk away." I froze, scanning the trees, but saw nothing. Then my shovel hit metal, a dull clang that echoed in my chest. A rusted box, no bigger than a shoebox, buried shallow. I pried it open, my fingers fumbling, and inside was a locket gold, heavy, engraved with the same circle and slash symbol from the knife in the shed. A note was folded inside, Henry's handwriting. "Emily, this is yours. They'll kill to take it. Keep it close." I slipped the locket around my neck, its weight cold against my skin, and ran back to the cabin, the map crumpled in my fist. The woods felt alive now, eyes in every shadow, branches snapping behind me. I locked the door, barricaded it with the oak table, and sat, the locket in one hand, the rifle in the other. My phone buzzed again, Sophia, this time a voicemail, her voice low, venomous. You think you're clever, Em? You have no idea what you're holding. Give it up, or I'll make sure you lose everything: your job, your future, your life. I deleted it, but my hands shook. She knew about the locket, or something like it. They all did. The next day, I drove to a diner in Port Angeles, the kind of place where nobody asks questions. I opened Henry's journal again, flipping to a page I'd missed. Everett Holdings. Land deal, 1,985. They cheated me. The locket proves it. My mind raced. The cabin sat on land worth millions. Maybe more, tied to some deal gone wrong. The locket was evidence, leverage, something Sophia and Liam and maybe others would kill for. I called a friend from law school, Mia, who worked in property law. Check Everett Holdings, I said, my voice low. Discreetly. She promised to dig, but her tone was tense. Be careful, Em. That name's tied to some bad people. Back at the cabin, I found a voicemail from Henry, one I'd saved but never listened to closely. His voice was rough, urgent. Emily, the locket's your shield. Don't trust them. Not Claire, not James, not Sophia. The lake holds the rest. I played it again, my heart pounding. The rest of what? I was about to head back to the lake when headlights flashed through the window, 2 cars, pulling up fast. I grabbed the rifle, my pulse a drumbeat, and peered out. Sophia stepped out, her coat blood red against the snow, Liam at her side, and a third figure tall, hooded, the same one from the porch. They didn't knock. They circled the cabin, testing the windows, their voices low but sharp. I crouched, the locket burning against my chest, and dialed 911, whispering my location. But the line crackled, then went dead. My phone buzzed on last text from the unknown number. No one's coming. I gripped the rifle, my hands steady now, Henry's voice in my head. The quiet ones come back stronger. I wasn't running. Not this time. The door rattled, a crowbar scraping against the new lock, and I aimed, waiting. They wanted a fight. I'd give them one.